I grew up here in Minnesota, Minneapolis. I graduated from what is now known as the Plymouth Center for Arts Education. Anybody heard of it? All right. It was the Minnesota Center for Arts Education. When I was going there as a beta graduating class. I went on to enroll in the University of Minnesota. That wasn't really my thing. So my dad was nice enough to realize that and started asking me about what I wanted to do. And we ended up driving up to Duluth, taking a look at the Sundew, the Cutter Sundew, and the Coast Guard station up there. And I thought that was for me. I wanted to learn a trade. I wanted to work on the water. So it pretty much all started with a boat that was actually built in Duluth, which those, there were 39 180-foot Coast Guard cutters that were used as buoy tenders, and 38 were built in Duluth. So I got stationed out in Rhode Island, kind of a hub for wooden boats. And someone from here sent me a book called The Boat Who Wouldn't Float by Farley Mowat. And that kicked off my interest in wooden boats. I got stationed out in Seattle. I got released from active duty in Seattle. Told my parents that I was going to stay there for a year as a civilian and check things out. That was in 1999, so my math is a little off. I started living on my own wooden boat, Chris Craft, at the time, and I worked as a marine mechanic. I worked on icebreakers, I've worked on container ships, and I've worked on yachts from 18 to about 60 feet, gas and diesel, electrical, all those related things. One day it just struck me that just wasn't creative enough for me. I remember the day I was putting a piston into an engine that I just was rebuilding, and it just dawned on me, there's only one way to do this. There's no other way, there's no creativity. I needed to do something else. So I started looking at boat schools around the Seattle area. Ended up going up to Seattle Central to the program that I now teach, and that really struck me as what I wanted to do. One of the things that I really liked about that program is it's geared towards putting people to work. That's what it's doing. It's not a hobby shop. It's not for people that want to do this for an avocation. It's for people that want to do it as a vocation. When I graduated, I went and I apprenticed under a master shipwright. I became a journeyman shipwright. Does everybody know what a shipwright is? Shipwright's someone that works on wooden boats. That's what a shipwright is. I've got to explain that just about every time I say it. I've worked in various boat and shipyards all throughout Puget Sound. I own my own business working on boats. And I'll tell you what, if you want a good employee, employ someone that's run their own business. Because I know what every dime costs an employer, all the time, all the materials, all that kind of stuff. I spent 4 years at a union shipyard working on commercial fishing boats. One of the things that I really wanted to do there was work on these wooden boats, these large wooden schooners before they went away. Believe it or not, Seattle has the oldest working fishing fleet in the United States. The boats that I was working on in 2010 were already 100 years old. They're still going up to the Bering Sea and catching halibut. And I wanted to get my hands on those boats before they went away. Unfortunately, I was right. They are starting to go away. There just isn't the wood to keep them going. But I did get that experience before those boats did. Yes,
you
sir.
mentioned there just isn't the wood to keep them going. What particular type of wood do you need? There's a lot of forests around.
Right, there's a lot of forest. So, and one thing that I've always been taught as a shipwright, as someone that works on wooden boats, is boats do well with wood from that area of the world. So up there in the Pacific Northwest, those boats are primarily built out of Douglas fir. So we use a lot of fir for the frames and fir for the planks. Not a lot of mahogany on those boats, mostly fir, maybe some yellow cedar. And that's old growth stuff, so that stuff is gone. During Mount St. Helens, a lot of old growth fir trees were felled by the eruption of the volcano. And what happened, if any of you are woodworkers, you know there's air-dried lumber and there's kiln-dried lumber. And the stuff you get at Home Depot is kiln-dried lumber because no one's got the time or the patience or the money to have a log sitting around for 2 years while it air dries. So they flash dry these pieces of wood. Well, that's what happened during Mount St. Helens. So all this old growth fur basically had the lignin. I'm not going to get too sciencey on you. I don't know all of that stuff. That's my wife. She's a biology teacher. But it kind of super dried them, and they rotted out quickly. And so now the fishermen, being very superstitious, won't even go near the fur. So they don't go near the fur. What are you going to put in their boats? And they're moving on to steel and things like that. That's a good question. Yes?
How do you decommission one of those boats?
Well,
It must be a hard process.
it is, you know, depending upon what happens, you either got to chop it up, and that costs money. And that's literally what happens is a crew will get on and they will take everything usable off the boat and then just chainsaw the thing apart. And that's kind of heartbreaking, especially for somebody like me. Or you get someone to turn it into a museum ship or try to preserve it. So there's a couple out there trying to be preserved by some organizations, and there's a couple that have been bought by private investors who want to turn them into yachts or charter boats, and those are the kind of things that that make me smile, but it's also not very realistic. Where are you going to moor an 80-foot boat? And again, they're going to have the same problems the fishermen are running into. Where are you going to find the wood to repair those boats? It's not all doom and gloom, though, because we have epoxy and we can laminate a lot of stuff together. But like I said, a lot of those fishermen are superstitious and they don't like that kind of repair. So along the way, along my careers in the boatyards, I substitute taught at the Wood Technology Center, where I'm now an instructor. I taught at a little nonprofit called the Center for Wooden Boats, and gained some teaching experience. And when one of my instructors was retiring, he asked me to apply to fill his shoes. So I did. And that's where the boat school comes in. The boat school was started in 1937. I've been told, I've never checked this out, that it's the oldest running boat school in the United States. Since 1937, there's only been 6 instructors, and that's including myself. So people stay and they don't leave. I am one of only 2 instructors that has ever taught by themselves. I don't have anyone teaching with me. It became part of Seattle Central College in about the mid-60s. That's when they took over that program. So the Wood Technology Center teaches cabinetry, teaches boat building, and it teaches carpentry. Whether you're going into any one of those disciplines, your first quarter is going to be core. It's going to be a common quarter, learning core, woodworking, and just general professional skills so that myself, the other instructors know that everyone's on the same page safety-wise. This is real important. When I got hired to do this teaching job, they were actually teaching out the program. We are a worker retraining program. We get our money from the state, and our capital, Olympia, was saying we don't see the need for a bunch of people that work on wooden boats. Why do we need to keep funding this program? So I was asked to rewrite this curriculum, update it, modernize it. I met with industry employers all throughout Puget Sound, a lot of whom were my former employers, friends of mine, pardon me. And we went on to update this program. So what it is, well, let me start over. What it was a 6-quarter program in fiberglass and wooden construction. And that's just too long. That's too long for someone who's looking to get a career, to make a living wage, to go to school. So the first thing I was asked to do was shorten that course. So I took this 6-quarter course and I made it a 4-quarter certificate or a 5-quarter associate's program. I had to get rid of some stuff. Not only because I was shortening it, but I was also asked to add a mechanical and electrical component to it. So what I have now is this 4-quarter certificate, 5-quarter associate's program. Once you get out of core, you're going to take my program. You've run through that first quarter with everybody. You're going to come into Introduction to Composites and Electrical 1. First thing you're going to be doing is building a fiberglass boat. You're going to hand lay up a fiberglass boat because there's more technical ways to make fiberglass boats these days, but hand layup is pretty much the only way to repair. And that's really the bread and butter for a lot of my students, is in repair, not in new construction. and I run an electrical program. We do basic AC and DC, real basic on the alternating current. I like to focus on direct current. That's the batteries that you see in your boat, because that's what most boat systems are run by. Then you'll go on to the third quarter, which is Introduction to Wooden Boat Joinery and Repair, and I couple that quarter with a mechanical program as well. And what I teach in the mechanical is gas and diesel engine basics, real basics here, not tear down and rebuild. Unfortunately, people are just throwing engines away now. They're not really rebuilding them. Outboards, because these students are going to run into a lot of those. Plumbing, toilets, got to do it. Someone's got to do it. The wood side is less traditional, although I still keep some traditional boats around so that the students have an opportunity to work on them, put planks on frames, do interior joinery. But we're also doing builds that are quick turnaround. So we're building a lot of boats out of plywood. Plywood is still real wood, despite what people might say, and some other kind of non-traditional techniques. The fourth quarter is composites 2 and electrical 2. We'll get a little bit more advanced in the composites. We'll do resin infusion, which is literally putting a bag over the entire boat and using vacuum suction to suck all of the resin in, and then you get a complete boat right from there. It's pretty high tech. You have no or very little waste in any of the materials. But like I said, it's not good for repair, and that's mainly what folks are doing. And then advanced electrical, or electrical 2, I'll call it, because I'm not an advanced electrician, but we'll go into more battery bank sizing and things like that. The other thing that we're doing to bring ourselves into the 21st century is we started employing CNC, which is computer numeric controlled machines. We have a router, and what the students will do is they'll take a computer-aided design class, they'll design a part, they'll import that part to the computer on the CNC machine, and then a router, just a giant 10 horsepower router on steroids, will come and cut that piece out of wood. And it doesn't take the place of a good technician. You've got to know grain direction when you're using a piece of machinery like that. You've got to know what the depth of cut is going to be like. You've got to know all those things. It's just another tool. So I might have a student who in the morning is using a computer to cut out a piece of wood, and then in the afternoon they're using a 100-year-old tool like a caulking mallet to put cotton or oakum between the seams of a traditionally planked boat to keep it afloat. We run the gamut. And because sometimes there's just no improving on technology. There's just no other way to get that seam compound in the seams of those boats. And these students are going to run into that when they graduate from my program. One thing that's nice about the Pacific Northwest is our climate allows those wooden boats to thrive. We don't get the freezing like you do here in Minnesota. You don't get the super, super hot temperatures, at least not yet, that you do out here. So the boats tend to last a lot longer. Let's see here. I want to talk about my students. My students come from a wide variety of places. The average age of our students, and this is not just my program, but the cabinet making and the carpentry, which is huge right now in Seattle. Seattle's going through a construction boom, is 25 to 40 years old. I have a lot of veterans that run through my program and the other programs, but I've had a lot in my program. And as I was writing this and making notes, it dawned on me, I haven't had any Marines come through my program. I don't know why that is. Is there any Marines out there? I don't know. And, I'm a former Coastie. The Marines and the Coast Guard really get along, but I don't know. But I've had a lot of Navy sailors. I've had an Army Master Sergeant who is now working as our front desk person. He just couldn't leave the school. And that tends to be what happens. Of the faculty members that are there, the 6 that we have, only 1 has not been a student at that school. So we all seem to gravitate back. A lot of my students are on their second career. Out there we've got Amazon, we've got the biotechs, we've got Microsoft. Folks tend to get disillusioned and want to do something with their hands. They want to make something tangible, and they come and see me. And they go to work in a varied array of occupations, not just boat building and repair. These are very transferable skills that I'm teaching. You know, I'm not diminishing the work of carpenters or cabinet makers, but if you can build a boat, you can build a house. If you can build a boat, you can build a cabinet. What I tell my students are, you know, we might not build the most beautiful cabinets like they do in the cabinet shop, but our people's lives depend on our cabinets. You know, our cabinets become structural parts of the boat, whether it's a fiberglass boat or whether it's a wood boat. So I really stress safety and quality of work with my students. That seems to really resonate with the folks that come through my program. Like I said, this isn't a hobby shop. This is a program designed to put people to work. And I have formed a lot of partnerships with employers throughout the Puget Sound area and throughout the country. Just going over my notes, I could think of off the top of my head 23 employers that employed students from either the class I went through or the classes I've taught already. Some, and these are all Pacific Northwest companies, so you may not have heard of them. Delta Marine, which makes 150-foot plus fiberglass mega yachts, has employed many of the students from this program. Another one is Pocock Racing Shells. Anybody read the book Boys in the Boat? It's a great book. It's a book about the 1936 men's Olympic team for rowing crew. Well, it's
My Father's Day present.
yeah. So you can borrow it from my dad when he's done with it, and I know he'll read it really quickly.
Mentioned they won the gold medal.
They did. They won the gold medal against Germany. Well, the boat builder that built those boats still builds boats today. Of course, they're no longer wood. They're not cedar anymore. They're made out of carbon fiber. A 58-foot, 8-man rowing shell weighs 100 pounds. Can you imagine a 58-foot boat weighing 100 pounds? Now, when it's fully rigged, it's closer to 2, but they love to say that it weighs 100 pounds. And I've got students that have gone there. Another place that has employed some of my students is Jensen Motorboat Company, which is probably the premier wooden boat shop in the Seattle area. I work there myself. I have a lot of friends that still work there. Back in the day, they built the hydroplanes, Slow Motion 4 and Slow Motion 5, the ones that brought the Cup from Detroit to Seattle and basically put Seattle on the map for hydroplanes. And it's still there. I mean, hydroplanes are still a huge part of who we are. We've got the water. We had Boeing. It just fits. One organization that I've partnered with is the Antique Classic Boat Society. And they are a national organization. They actually have a chapter here in the Midwest, the Bob Speltz Land O'Lakes chapter. And they give my students a scholarship, just my students, not boat students in general, not boat students throughout Western Washington or the West Coast, just my students. They give a scholarship to one every single year. And that's great. One of the things that I've looked at is where my students are going. And there are at least 6 wooden boat shops here in Minnesota. Did anybody know that? There's some really quality work going on because of the runabouts, the Chris Crafts, the Garwoods, things like that can be put into a shop and kept over the winter. So that will keep those boats going. So there's actually a call for it. I've tried not to tell my mom that because then she'd want me to move back, and then it gets into this huge thing. So Dad, why don't you just keep that one to yourself, all right? So there's actually Midwest employers that have called me up looking for students. There's employers from Florida that have called up and tried to recruit my students. I don't think any one of them has gone to Florida. I think some have come out to the Midwest. I myself have been flown as a mechanic to Oakland to work on container ships. If we didn't get that job done, we were told we were sailing out to Hawaii with the boat. We tried to slow down the progress, but we actually did get done. And as a shipwright, I've been flown to Alaska. There was one of those schooners I was talking about, severely damaged, and they still had 50,000 pounds of halibut to catch. And halibut's selling up in Seattle for 35 bucks a pound. The boats were getting about $18 to $19 a pound from the market. So you say $50,000, they don't want to cut their trip short. So myself and my foreman flew up there, and we had to do a really quick repair that was good enough to keep this thing floating through the Bering Sea. The end of their season is about October. That's when the weather starts to get pretty bad. I know this because I spent 2 years in the Bering Sea when I was in the Coast Guard, and it bent up our steel boat, so I can't imagine what it does to those wood boats. That's why I keep stressing the quality of work with my students. Anyway, that boat finished its job just fine. Came back and we got to do the repairs correctly on it. But like I said, my students, they're going everywhere, and I couldn't be prouder of what I'm doing and where I'm teaching. I want to thank you for having me again. Yes.
Other than the beauty of a wood boat, is there any advantage over a steel or a fiberglass hull?
You know, it's funny you asked. I was just reading in the current issue of Wooden Boat magazine, so they're a little bit biased. But there seems to be, yeah, a little bit. There seems to be a group of young, and when I say young, 25 to 35-year-old lobster fishermen that are moving back to wood boats. They're having new wooden boats commissioned. And the reason they're doing this is because they were taught by their fathers who started their careers on fiberglass boats. And they're watching the back and knee problems that these lobstermen are having. And they're seeing these back and knee problems that their grandfathers didn't have, because the fact that a wood boat absorbs the shock of the seas a lot better, the vibration from the actual machinery a lot better. And I'll tell you, I've worked on steel boats, I've worked on aluminum boats, I've lived on wood boats, I've lived on steel boats. There is a difference. They're quieter and they do vibrate less. So, you know, that would be the advantage. As far as any other advantage, there isn't. You know, I've got a lot of very ecologically minded students. In Seattle, people want to be green. I tell them they're in the wrong business. There's really, it's hard to be a green boat builder. But what we are trying to do is limit our footprint. So for those of you, and you don't have this issue out here, but in the saltwater, we've got to put what we call sacrificial anodes on our boats. Used to be called zincs. Again, my wife, she's also a chemistry teacher, so she'd be able to explain this better, the nobility scale of metals, but you want to put a less noble metal on your shaft so that, you know, a boat going through the salt water, that electrolysis will eat that less noble metal. And I think I'm saying that right, before it eats that shaft. Well, they were zinc, and what do? They fall down to the bottom of the ocean. They get eaten up and they just fall down. So we're putting heavy metals into the water. The other thing is we painted the bottoms of boats with copper bottom paint. Again, I'm not sure that would happen here in the Great Lakes because you don't have the issues with the sea life, although we do got zebra mussels. Had to mention zebra mussels. So that copper bottom paint sloughs off so that the sea life won't stick to the bottom of the boat. Well, that's copper, and that's going. So they're developing zinkless anodes and copperless bottom paint. So we're taking these steps to become greener, but it's definitely not a green way to make a living right now. Yes.
One of the natural predators for fiberglass boats in Minnesota is muskrats. They love to chew on the bottoms and park for too long. What kind of natural predators do wood boats have as far as besides bad drivers?
You know, the natural predator would be another chemistry issue, is the actual fasteners themselves. So what'll happen is the fasteners that are fastening the planks of wooden boats to the frames were either steel, we call it iron, so they would be iron, or they'd be silicon bronze. So a boat gets iron sickness. It's a term you'd hear a lot out in Puget Sound, and that's where the rust, the actual fastener starts to rust, and it goes away, and that leaves a void. And when you've got a void in a wooden boat, or anywhere really, but you've got a void, you've got a place where air can get in, and moisture can get in, but it can't get out, and that will start to rot that boat from the inside out. It actually happened on the boat I owned. The plank seemed fine on the outside. It was almost completely hollow on the inside. The other thing that we do have muskrats, and what they do is they like to crawl into the exhausts of boats. And if any of you have done any boating, especially with inboard engines, you know, they take in seawater or raw water to cool the engine. And well, it's got to go somewhere, so it goes out the exhaust. So the exhausts are usually pretty low, and the critters will climb in, and they'll think it's warm in there, but hey, it seems warmer on the other side of this rubber wall. So they'll chew their way into the boat, and not only will that create an exhaust issue, but what happens is the boat might settle a little bit, or maybe some waves splash up and water starts to get in to the boat through that exhaust hose. Well, then it starts to sit a little bit lower. And then some more waves come, and it starts to sit lower and lower, and the next thing you know, the boat has sunk right at its moorings. And I've seen that all too often. And I tell you, it's a creepy feeling, seeing a boat, just these tight lines, and just the shadow of a boat below the surface. Whew, I don't like that. Any other questions?
What's the average size of your classes?
The average size of the classes are actually 18. 18 is my limit. I've taken an overage, so I'm taking 21 next quarter. I think I have time for probably one more question.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Do you work on sailboats?
We do. Yep. Sailboats of all kinds. Fiberglass, wood.
I just have a comment. The boat shows out of Lake Minnetonka. Everybody goes to the wood boats. And that's where all of
Every-
you love them. They just,
That's what I tell my students. Everybody loves wood boats. You put varnish on it, everybody loves the shiny. So, yep. I love it too.